And now, coming to us all the way from Texas is our friend Lark, just an American. He has a blog site. It's Lark in Texas. That's LarkInTexas.blogspot.com. And Lark, I think I've got you on the line. Are you there, sir?
I am. We have to quit meeting like this.
Yeah, I know. My wife's starting to become a bit concerned, but I'm one of those butter side up kind of guys, so you don't have much to worry about with me. In any case, Lark, please take it away. If it sounds like you need a swift kick in the butt, I'll jump in, but I'm sure you can handle it. Take care.
I'll just say help, Gary.
All right, nope, not a problem.
All right, very good. Well, welcome to United We Strike. Remember, don't buy, don't comply, ask why. I am Lark in Texas, just an American. You can find my research notes at larkintexas.blogspot.com. I left you folks last month with a quote, and I'm fond of quotes, as you'll see. That quote, the simple step of the courageous individual is not to take part in the lie or the we. One word of truth outweighs the world. This quote by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the famous author of the Gulag, of the archipelago. When he was referring to that word archipelago, he was referring to that which he likened to a chain of islands or a chain of gulags, slave work camps, populated by slave work units. So we understand that human slavery or human farming is humanity's oldest profession. Some have described human farming as the new cash crop. I also made reference to a 1921 science fiction novel, which I think you would be well served to become familiar with, if only to do a quick search and discover its provenance and its relevance to today. The book is entitled We, W-E, by Yevgeny Zamyatin, 1921. Now, I also made reference to something that you can also search online, entitled The Anatomy of Slave Speak, last month. But I'm going to throw you a bit of a curve, and I'm going to quote for you the man that some have called the oldest or the earliest known anarchist. A person who subscribes to no government whatsoever. His name was Zhuangzi. And I found this reference in a book by Bertrand Russell entitled The Problem of China. Zhuangzi is C-H-U-A-N-G. T is in Tom, Z is in zebra, E is in Edward. Zhuangzi. Some have called him the father of anarchism or anarchy. Here's that quote. The ruler of the Southern Ocean was Shu, or heedless. The ruler of the Northern Ocean was Hugh, or sudden. So we have two men here. One is named Heedless, and one is named Sudden. And the ruler of the center was Chaos. So now we have Heedless and Sudden, and now we meet Chaos. Shu and Hugh were continually meeting in the land of Chaos, who treated them very well. They consulted together how they might repay his kindness, and said, men all have 7 orifices for the purpose of seeing, hearing, eating, and breathing. while this poor ruler has alone not one. Let us try and make them for him. Accordingly, they dug one orifice in him every day, and at the end of 7 days, Chaos died. But you know that I speak to what is referred to as communitarianism. And I have posited that socialism equals gangsterism equals slavery. So I want to share with you how it is that you may, in fact, have been socially engineered, just like myself. In other words, you were socialized. And this comes from a book entitled White Collar, The American Middle Classes. Because this is what we see happening in our world today. We see an attack on the poor and on the middle class. Because remember, communitarianism is little more than a synthesis of capitalism and communism. But this is what C. Wright Mills, who famously coined the term the power elite, had to say about white collar, the American middle classes. See if you recognize yourself. In a society of employees dominated by the marketing mentality, it is inevitable that a personality market should arise. For in the great shift from manual skills to the art of handling, selling, and servicing people, personal or even intimate traits of employees are drawn into the sphere of exchange and become commodities in the labor market. Kindness and friendliness become aspects of personalized service or of public relations of big firms, rationalized to further the sale of something. With anonymous insincerity, the successful person thus makes an instrument of his own appearance and personality. In the formulas of personnel experts, men and women are to be shaped into the well-rounded, acceptable, effective personality to close the deal or to make the sale. Remember, you can make the sale of an idea as often as you can of a product or a service. The personality market, the most decisive effect and symptom of the great sales room, underlies the all-pervasive distrust and self-alienation so characteristic of a metropolitan people. Without common values and mutual trust, the cash nexus that links one man to another in transient contact has been made subtle in a dozen ways and made to bite deeper into all areas of life and relations. People are required by the salesman ethic and convention to pretend interest in others in order to manipulate them. Men are estranged from one another as each secretly tries to make an instrument of the other. And in time, a full circle is made. One makes an instrument of himself and is estranged from it also. I know I saw myself in that passage. So I'm going to jump over briefly and touch upon the anatomy of slave speak. This comes from a copyrighted piece, Frederick Mann, 1997. Do a search, buildfreedom.com. The anatomy of slave speak. So, Mr. Mann asks, what are the benefits of understanding slave speak? He says, once you understand political slave speak, that is the language used to establish and maintain master-slave relationships, you become very aware of how those who don't understand slave speak can be dominated, subjugated, and controlled by words, essentially enslaved by words. Correspondingly, you become impervious to external control through words. In other words, you enjoy more freedom, and you have more options available to you. I mentioned last month that the writer likened this piece entitled The Anatomy of Slave Speak to Gulliver's Travels or Alice in Wonderland, because he made comparisons of Jonathan Swift's work and Lewis Carroll's work to his own piece. But he also makes reference to what he called the Spooner Insight. Remember, he wrote the treatise in 1867 entitled No Treason, the Constitution of No Authority. My name is Alice. So please, Your Majesty, said Alice very politely, but she added to herself, why, they're only a pack of cards. After all, I needn't be afraid of them. The Queen turned crimson with fury, and after glaring at her for a moment like a wild beast, began screaming, off with her head. Off with... Nonsense, said Alice, very loudly and decidedly, and the Queen fell silent. Joseph Stalin said, ideas are more powerful than guns. We would not let our enemies have guns. Why should we let them have ideas? Robert Anton Wilson said, language creates spooks that get into our heads and hypnotize us. Stephen Biko said, the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And Sally Kempton said, it is hard to fight an enemy who has outposts in your head. To continue, the first thing I want you to realize is the primary tool or weapon terrorcrats use to subjugate, control, and dominate their victims is words. By terrorcrat, I mean a coercive political agent or a terrorist bureaucrat. A terrorcrat is always an individual human being. Please think about this issue. How often has a terrorcrat stuck a gun in your face and said, pay your taxes or else? Compare this to the number of times terrorcrats have sent you pieces of paper with mere words on them, telling you what to do or what not to do, and what penalties you may be subjected to if you don't obey. Now please stretch your imagination and imagine a world in which nobody takes the words of terrorcrats seriously. They say, we are the government. And everyone laughs at them and asks, government? What is that? And whatever they reply, they are greeted with more laughter. Then they say, our word is law, and you must obey. Everyone just laughs at the terrorcrats and asks, law? What is that? Again, whatever they've replied, they are greeted with more laughter. So how much power would terrorcrats have in such a world? I don't care how much thought you have to put into this, but it's absolutely vital that you understand that the primary means terrorcrats use to subjugate, control, and dominate their victims is words. I encourage you to read this piece, folks. I've read it several times, and I draw inspiration from it each and every time. And I also recommend that you check out what the writer meant when he said that this track offers insight into Lysander Spooner and what he meant in No Treason, the Constitution of No Authority. Now, you've heard me say before that I don't know anybody named we, us, they, them, the state, the government, the community, or even we the people. I've never met such a person. So why should I enter into a contractual arrangement with a zombie creation with such a name? Ask yourself, do you know anybody with these names? I sure don't. I'll read you just the first one out of 8 elements of the Spooner Insight. Number 1, the pretended U.S. Constitution, quote unquote, has been a fraud and a hoax from the outset. It was never signed as a contract in any legal way by anyone. It never bound anyone. It was foisted on a naive, gullible, credulous populace. Now, I want to make reference to a website that is worthy of your attention. And the website is Friesian.com. Fries is spelled like fries, like McDonald's French fries. Friesian.com. The name of the piece is entitled Rights, Responsibilities, and Communitarianism. Highly recommend it. This writer too, and this, by the way, is a site that's named for the philosopher Jacob Friedrich Fries, as well as Leonard Nelson and others. But here's one quote that I particularly like, because this writer also begins this essay with some quotations. The state stands between me and my body and tells me what kind of doctor I must employ. When my soul is sick, unlimited spiritual liberty is given me by the state. Now then, it doesn't seem logical that the state shall depart from this great policy and take the other position in the matter of smaller consequences, the health of the body. Whose property is my body? Probably mine. If I experiment with it, who must be answerable? I, not the state. If I choose injudiciously, does the state die? Oh no. This from Mark Twain in Osteopathy, 1901. Now, you know I love Mark Twain. He also penned something called Corn Pone Opinions. Here's that quote. Tell me where a man gets his corn pone, and I'll tell you about his opinions. Tell me where a man gets his corn pone. That's his, where does he derive his sustenance? And I'll tell you about his opinions. Now, this is no more true today than it was then, and probably will be tomorrow. So now I'm going to irritate my friend Gary just a bit, and we're going to touch upon these other schools of thought which lend towards this dominant philosophical argument made today by communitarians. Remember, communitarians are of the left and the right. It is the darling of academics, think tanks, molders of opinion, and policy analysts. There are many schools of thought which lend towards communitarianism, and you can find these at my research site, lark.intexas.blogspot.com. Start with the entry, the sum of all things. Of course, the sum of all things is the truth. This from William Blair of infraspect.com. So I know we hate these multisyllabic words, and they are troubling. But if you were to simply click the link for each of these particular ISMS-isms, or schools of thought, you have to ask yourself, well, where do I fit in this scenario? Have I been socially engineered? Have I been socialized? What has lent to my values, beliefs, attitudes? And why do I say that I'm surrounded by criminals or gangsters? Just to rattle these off. Careerism. You ever been told that having a career was quite important? Credentialism. What about your bona fides? Did you graduate? Do you have a degree? Let me see your resume. Malthusianism. This from Thomas Malthus. There's too many people. Way too many people. Somebody has to cull the herd. Big problem. Then there's Darwinism. What was it that Darwin said? What was it he didn't say? Was it true or was it not true? Which leads, of course, to social Darwinism, a la Herbert Spencer, Thomas Huxley. Oh my, there's too many people. We must cull the herd. In fact, the herd is the problem. There's too many people. Some will have to go. And then there's this word futilitarianism. It comes from two words, futile and utilitarianism, which we'll revisit in here in a moment. Now, famously, Ezekiel Emanuel declares that he was a futilitarianism. He's the one that, as a bioethicist in the Obama administration, asserts that one has a duty to die. And for some folks, the sooner the better. Well, then there is scientism. Science is above all other considerations. Here, we do not consider morality or immorality. It's unscientific. This is not an enlightened approach. This is not even a reasonable approach. Science will conquer all. And therefore, if there's no morality or even immorality to consider, then there's a middle ground. And that middle ground is amorality. We're just not going to consider morality at all. It wouldn't be scientific. Well, then we have this thing called humanism. The father of humanism, Paul Kurtz, Kurtz. See, the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Some of the verbiage was adopted from Thomas Paine. How can we say Thomas Paine was a bad guy? Then there's transhumanism, even posthumanism. Think iRobot. Think zombies. Man's marriage with machine. Paul Kurzweil. Miss Vita Moore.
Lark, I hate to butt in, man, but we got about a minute, and I want to make sure you get a little bit of a plug in there for your website and do some blatant self-promotion.
Okay.
But I can only give you about one more minute, man, so we're coming right down to the wire.
You're such an ogre, Gary.
I know. I get out the whip.
Well, let me finish up. Syndicalism, neoliberalism, progressivism, industrialism, utilitarianism, obscurantism, nihilism, Talmudism, Kabbalism, utopianism. All blend towards that all-encompassing ism, communitarianism. Thank you for listening. This is Lark in Texas signing out. larkintexas.blogspot.com.
All right, Lark, thank you very much. And you did manage to get that website in there as a last-minute plug. And hope we can get back together again next month. You take care now.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
And to the audience, please do stand by. We have yet more programming in the works for you here on the United We Strike Marathon.